forgot to unmute myself. Good start. So, hey everybody, I'm Kurt Wooker Jr. This is the CoinGeek weekly live stream. Broadcast live from South Florida, managed artfully by Mr. Alex Vidal, also here in SoFlo. We are rocking and rolling in 100-degree heat. And little warning ahead of time, I've had my power in the, not just the house, but like 2,500 houses or whatever in the area. There was like a pretty major power outage. So if all of a sudden I disappear, that's could be related. It's been a little iffy today, and not really anything I can do about it because it's not just here. I tried to go to a coffee shop to be functional, and the coffee shop I went to also didn't have power. So it's gonna be one of those days. But I think we're over it. But just letting you know, like it could be a thing. So don't assume some terrible thing has happened. I have not necessarily been abducted by lizards. Although, if you want to read my article from today, we have pretty interesting conversation about how Bitcoin is not old, or is not new technology. In fact, it's largely old technology. It's like 95% old technology. I write about some of the history of sort of the predicate ideas and tech that went into Bitcoin, kind of creating everything. Kind of pretty excited about it. But yeah, it's my pinned post on X, and I don't know if I've shared it anywhere else today. I've had a little bit of a weird day because of my power being out from the start, and kind of screwed me up all day so far. So I am a little bit winging it on today's episode. And if you are watching, first of all, thank you. I would have nothing to do at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time every Tuesday if it was not for you. And if you could please like, subscribe, hit the alert bell, and do all that other jazz. Let our technocrat cyborg gods know that you want to watch the show every single week. And you also want to know every time we go live on the CoinGeek channel. I also just realized I did not plug my camera in, and it's blinking at me. So I'm going to reach toward my lens. There we go. I have connected. Like I said, it's going to be one of those days. If you want to fill... No, I'm going to kick my desk now, too. If you want to fill the troll box, let everybody know your questions, comments, blessings, cursings, rapes, gripes, or gropes. What's up? Greetings from Uganda. Hello, NFT Metaverse. Thank you for watching. I appreciate your comments and your viewership. So thank you kindly. We're going to have one Darren, I always screw this last name up, Kellenschwiler, I think is the right way to say it, is going to be on the show here in a couple of minutes. He is one of the main G's over at BSVA, the BSV Association, working on a whole bunch of really cool stuff, working on the tech, the stuff that actually matters here. He is intimately involved in a bunch of the stuff that is roadmappy, all the really cool stuff, and it's been nice actually working with him because Darren's someone who I've known casually for I don't know 5 or 6 years now, and really kind of only see him like once or twice a year, and so it's nice to be on a couple of calls here and there with him and catching up, because A, he's a smart guy, and B, he's a funny guy, and those are two of my key requirements for having a healthy relationship with anybody. So again, please like, subscribe, hit the alert bell. We have a new advertiser, and we're going to be introducing a couple of new things here. So we're going to be doing a meme of the week, which is just a little grab from social media. If we see something trending, I think this week it was the Hawk Tua girl, but this is a PG-13 show, so we're not going to be getting into it. But we'll be debuting the meme of the week a little later on in the show. The new advertiser, who I'm not going to dox just yet. And what was the other one? What else are we doing? Something else of the week, something else of the day. I don't know. I'm exhausted. It's been one of those days for me. Okay, so we are going to cut to the ad. Mr. Vidal is going to help me recall what the other new thing is that we're doing here live on the air, and then we will return with Degan. Comment of the day. Yes, that's the most important thing. I totally forgot. We got a new sponsor for the show, Champions. The Champions of Otherworldly Magic. They used to go by the Coom Battles title, all of that stuff. They are Champions TCG, I think is what it is now. They have been very, very kind to offer to pay, a gift. They've offered to gift one of their packs of cards to play the game to the person who makes the comment of the day. So if you have a really good comment in the comment box, really it's up to me and Alex. So we're going to decide sometime, inside the last 10 minutes of the show, what was the best comment of the whole day? And whoever that person is, you need to have a hand cash handle, and you will get a free gift from the CoinGeek Weekly live stream, but via the courtesy of the Champions team, who is, frankly, just a really good group of people. So thank you to the Champions folks for reaching out and making such a delightful offer for our viewers. And I think it's going to be time to play that ad. So, Mr. Vidal, if you could articulate or reticulate the combobble bits, we'll be right back. Hello, sir.
Oh, hello. You honestly caught me off guard there.
The ending did not necessarily trigger me that I was back on the air either. So, thanks to Rock Wallet. They're our new sponsor for the show. We appreciate you guys. I'm a big fan of Rock Wallet. Been a user for a long time. Probably a pretty good referrer for them too. So, Rock Wallet, thanks for the returning support. I also just realized I never turned my ceiling fan on, and on these 100-degree days in South Florida, I start getting shiny about halfway through the show if there's no airflow. So, got a lot to look forward to on this episode. Darren, first of all, I think you've probably been on the show 3 or 4 times in the past, both individually and as part of groups and stuff. But if you could reintroduce yourself, let everybody know what you're doing at BSVA. What your new title is, what do we praise you for as we bow and kiss your ring when we see you in person, sir?
Oh, yes, of course. That's exactly how I like to be greeted. So these days I've been just saying I'm a tech lead at BSVA. So I am part of this expanding team called the Utilization Value Stream, which really just means everything that isn't Teranode and SV node. It's all the peripheral stuff, all the application-based stuff. My background, as you know, but as the other audience members might not know, is application development.
Yep.
So I'm a BSV builder. So all of that sort of gaffer taping things together is where I come from. And these days I'm trying to help other people gaffer tape things together, or maybe solder things together and actually make some very robust infrastructure components and so on.
Well, and that's something that's key as somebody who also is in I'm not really the one hacking away at the keys, but I have been in project management and people management and wearing the executive hat on a number of things. I can attest to the fact that A, BSV is a great place to develop, but B, it is also a very imperfect place to develop in a lot of ways. And there's the pitch deck version of why BSV is awesome. And then there's the reality of, but you have to do it and there's a workaround for and that kind of thing. So can we maybe let's talk about, 5 or 6 years now of BSV development, in these eras. I think there was there was a big pump up around Unwriter and his tools, and then he kind of fizzled and disappeared. And then there was, a fresh hey, build on Twetch SDK and let's do everything in these formats. And we got Matter Cloud and some of these other things that were really useful. And then now we're kind of in the what's on chain Jungle Bus era. BitTails also on certain things where that's kind of where everybody's getting their stuff fed. But what do you think, in that progression of things that basically tooling and then moving into the toolbox stuff that is being worked on now, which is exponentially more robust in my experience. But what do you think that path looked like for somebody that maybe left in 2020 because they're I'm done? Why should they come back? What has progressed, and what is there to look at that has been built over the last 4-ish years?
I think that what people have been trying to do over the last 5 years is sell shovels, in that they want to be the infrastructure component that everyone has to use. And part of that problem in my ELAS years. Trying to sell the platform that everyone else builds on top of is like a common pattern that we've seen over the last 5 years. And I think that that's kind of Web 2 thinking. I think that the future ahead of us, the sort of prosperous future that we can imagine, is more decentralized in that you can actually have your own software stacks be interoperable and not have to rely on platform-based things like Planaria was necessarily. So I think, yeah, from my perspective, those were some of the mistakes that we made over the last 5 years. And it's not like everyone made that mistake or anything like that, but that's how I've seen it evolve. Now I think a lot more people are thinking like, how do we build stuff that doesn't just look like G Suite and so on?
Yeah.
So that's how I've seen it evolve.
I make a lot of AOL analogies when it comes to like everybody in BSV for the last 5 years has want to be AOL circa like 1996.
Yeah.
Be like, hey, we're going to introduce everybody to the MetaNet, and here's this toolbox, and yes, it's branded, but it's also like it's also safe because we built it for you.
Yeah.
And then, I remember in the, I don't even know, like early 2000s at some point when I realized like, oh, I can just use a web browser and be outside of this ecosystem if I want to be. And I think that's kind of what we're transitioning to, is like open protocols everywhere, like use what you need to use. Like your data isn't stuck here. Like everything from your basic like wallet management to key derivation to like, here's how to use Bitcoin as a non-proprietary templated system.
Yeah.
Really key.
Unwriter, to be fair, did lead the way on that thinking in terms of the protocols.
I agree.
Yeah. Some sort of Bitcom is just registering things, but the problem is convincing other people to use that same protocol to announce their new protocol, so to speak. So everyone was still trying to be the URL that you go to discover other URLs. So I think some of the stuff that we're now working on and will soon release is addressing that, in that it's defining some things that are more generic than a specific provider.
Yeah.
And really trying to go out of our way to always build something a little bit white label, so that hypothetically it's just like, well, this is one way you could do it, because it is helpful to kind of agree on how to do things.
Yeah.
And because then you can cooperate a little bit more easily. But the difference with the BSVA doing this stuff is that there is no sort of subtext of, oh, and by the way, we own everything from here on. So quite encouragingly over the last year, we've been a part of driving forward that narrative. We're not the only ones in the scene, obviously, but we've got some good alignment with a core group of developers that is expanding.
Yeah,
contractors that are coming forward and helping us put these tools together.
So let's talk a little bit about those specifics. And I'm going to pretend to be ignorant and curious, even though I've gotten the opportunity to work with you and the other teams quite a bit over the last 5 or 6 months here. But to somebody who's completely ignorant about kind of what's going on in the developing the future roadmap of BSV, I think a lot of people, well, yeah, Teranode, it's one of those, throw it at the wall. That's the solution. But ultimately, there's a lot of other tooling that's going to need to connect to that. Like, we're talking about a very new implementation of Bitcoin for which there's basically no previous reference client to work from. And therefore, how do we connect the peer-to-peer stuff? And are we going to use RPC? Are we going to use ZMQ? Like, what about my wallet stack? Can I use my 5-year-old wallet stack that I really, really like? And
right.
So can we talk a little bit about sort of those building blocks and everything else that's kind of going around the Teranode stuff? And
certainly.
Yeah,
so,
please.
So I have been given this mission over the last couple of years to assume that SV node disappears and is no longer available, and that Teranode is at the center of the network and actually doesn't give you very much back. So that's the working assumption. Now, the reality is the actual mainnet traffic isn't such that it's going to kill SV node immediately or anything like that.
Yeah.
And also the team of developers working on Teranode are BSV people. They are aware of all of the peripheral services that rely on SV node, and they will likely make equivalents, build that into Teranode. And the working assumption is no longer relevant necessarily in the immediate term. But so,
Yeah.
so my sort of planning horizon is just moved out several years now. So maybe in the last year that has come to light that actually is possible to have RPC endpoints that look quite similar and familiar to everyone, and
Yeah.
that most people actually want that. Great. But to be ready for the kind of traffic that we expect in future, once it's possible with Teranode, you do definitely need to do things, or rather, it's more economic to do things in a mandala upgrade kind of way.
Yeah.
And just to be clear, that's a marketing term that's supposed to encompass all of these sort of small changes that we have been making over the last 5 years. Some companies are already implementing something that I would retroactively say, yeah, that's kind of what we all meant when we were pointing to the mandala sort of diagrams all of those years ago, back in 2017 or 18.
Yeah.
That's sort of come to fruition kind of naturally as people trying to work towards that sort of common goal. But yes, it's been my task to try and clarify that, try and give names to things that people
Sure.
understand, which is half the battle, honestly. And then trying to develop the open source components, the functional blocks that commercial companies can then just pick up and start using, and it hopefully will make their lives a little bit easier.
Yeah. Beautiful. So let's talk a little bit on some of those specifics. Some of the things that are floating out there, like Liteclient, which is one of those names for basically SPV principally being deployed over BSV. You also hear the term overlay used a lot, but I think a lot of people are unclear what exactly that means. It's another one of those terms like Teranode will fix it. Everything else, yes, that'll be an overlay. That'll fix that.
But of course,
And then now some of these new formats, I keep hearing actually guys like Ty using terms like beef, and I'm like, yeah, I've got a ribeye dry brining in the fridge. That sounds delightful, but
absolutely.
turns out it's a technical. It's our what do you call it?
But it's also delicious.
Yeah. So let's kind of walk me through maybe 5 or 6 things that are key, like I mentioned, and but like what do they do? Like why what is beef? Why is it called that? What is it compliant with? Like, why do we need to name a thing a beef in the first place?
Right. So you don't have to say thing, I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah.
So BEEF stands for Background Evaluation Extended Format. So Simon Ordish and Sigi Oskarsson came up with extended format, which was including some data from the previous transaction that you're spending the UTXO of, so that you don't have to hand that stuff to Teranode. It can literally just take what you've given it, make sure that it does actually exist in the UTXO lookup, and then evaluate the transaction. So that's extended format.
Yeah.
So I wanted to make an extended format that allowed you to check one more thing. The idea was that most people might not have the full UTXO set, and therefore they wouldn't be able to look up the extended data and check that it was actually real. And so the first exploit would be, well, I just say that I have more Satoshis in that output than I really do. And then I can kind of waste your time by giving you outputs that look much more than they are, and pretend to spend those tokens and give them to you. So the idea was the way you solve that problem is you have to include the entire previous transaction. And the reason this solves the problem is you can then hash it, get the TX ID, and if the TX ID matches, then that is the real transaction. So you now know for sure that the previous Satoshi amount is what you're expecting it to be. So predominantly that was the reason for beef existing, was so that you could actually check without a UTXO lookup what you were being given by some counterparties. The idea is the counterparty can give you this beef structure. You have all the information you need to run script evaluation to check to see if that transaction is actually valid in all of the ways that you would normally check. So that's what beef is. It's background evaluation extended format. Allows you to evaluate not just the current transaction, but its parent And if that's not mine, then its parent. And if that's not mine, then its parent. You can go on indefinitely. It allows you to do things like offline transactions and that sort of stuff.
Very cool. And that's just one style of, not new. I guess it is new. It is a new way to generate a transaction. I've had a lot of people.
Collecting a couple of transactions.
Yeah.
And there are Merkle paths if they exist.
Yes. Also key. Yeah. So I actually see a question, Mr. Vidal, if you could post up the question from Stephen February, has an interesting question about SPV. And you hear people talk about this incorrectly often. They're like, wow, with SPV, can you send the Merkle proof with the thing? And it's like, well, you don't actually get a Merkle proof until you mine the block. So so they don't work exactly. But is there a way to use cryptography and one of these new transaction formats in order to send tokens and have it be instant, sort of zero conf plus, if as it were, where you can say, no, we like that previous coin was definitely valid, and because of this new thing, I know that this new transaction is also valid. Is that right? Is that what Beef was explaining, or is there some other thing? Can we explain?
Yeah, that's sort of what there's one more caveat. So absolutely, Beef allows you to pass all the data you need for a counterparty to be able to validate a transaction. But to address the question immediately, though, so how is it supposed to get that Merkle proof? The simple answer is from the counterparty. And if the counterparty doesn't have a Merkle proof, then they're supposed to get that from an overlay that got a Merkle proof. And if the overlay doesn't have a Merkle proof, then it should get that from a Merkle service or something that calculates all of the Merkle paths. So these are all things that are sort of futuristic and so on. Overlays do actually exist. It's not officially launched yet, but they do exist in repositories, and they're being reviewed right now. Merkle service, I've been trying to establish that project for about a year now. It's kind of early to build it, honestly. But once Teranode is out, it's going to be announcing subtrees, and we're going to need a service that listens to subtrees and calculates Merkle paths so that people can receive them, and so that those Merkle paths can be distributed across the network. So the like today answer is when you broadcast to Arc, you can set a callback URL, and Arc has a service in it called BlockTX. Once a block is announced, it's going to calculate Merkle path and send that back to that callback URL. So that's the way that you ought to get Merkle paths today. And the format that Arc will give you is BUMP, or BSV Unified Merkle Path format. That's brc.dev/74 to the memory. And Beef is brc.dev/62.
Oh man!
So Beef is something that you can. You've got a bunch of bumps or Merkle paths and a bunch of transactions, and we call that whole blob Beef for short. But that's what that means. Nice. So today you get it from Arc, and if you missed it or that you didn't know to do that, you can send a raw transaction, a normal transaction, to beef.u.network. And I know that's an annoying URL, but
who made the decision to put the umlaut on?
Yeah, this is just my personal. I thought it looked like a mandala in the middle because there's an O and there's two dots and then two dots.
I like it. Okay,
it's supposed to be a network. So
good answer.
Beef.mandala.network in some sense. Anyway, so if you go there, you can that will convert this stuff for you. And if you look up my GitHub, you can see how I'm converting. And this is really just using What's on Chain's API to go grab the transactions and put them into the right format. Grabbing the Merkle proofs and
very cool
into the right format and stuff. So that's a convenient method today. Sorry.
So I crystal clear to me. I think to other developers paying attention, either they're already aware or they're saying, well, that makes sense. But or maybe we're getting a lot of negative feedback. So by all means, if you're watching and think we're crazy, we'd love your comments. You could qualify for the comment of the day by being super vitriolic. So it's an opportunity for you. But let's talk a little bit about like the BRCs, which is something you mentioned that other people may not know about. And
Yeah.
then to give it like an example, if you go into the BTC ecosystem, like yes, 99% of people run the Bitcoin Core client, but there's also Bitcoin Knots. I think you can even technically run versions of Bitcoin Unlimited and other stuff on the network. And these things have their own repos and their own development paths, their own lead dev, and all these other things. It's actually a little more diverse over in the Bitcoin Cash ecosystem, where there's probably 5 or 6 frequently used clients that do various things. SV Node has been much more monolithic in that the SV Node client, the reference client was so different post Genesis that a lot of the BU and other nodes that kind of came with us, they all
They
kind of
didn't follow. Yeah, they
yeah,
didn't
they
follow.
they didn't follow. And so I think a lot of development quietly just kind of made its way into Endchain, and then a lot of people are like, "Hey, how do I contribute to this project in any way?" And then you kind of had to know where to go. But
Mm.
the BRC concept is, I guess, by my estimation, about a year old or something.
Something like that.
Maybe it's older than that,
I
but
think it might be a year and a half by now. Yeah.
yeah, so something like that. But can we talk a little bit about like BRC? Who can contribute? How do you contribute? Where do you go to say, hey, I've got a bug fix, or I've got an idea for a thing.
Yeah.
Talk me through like who controls the BRC process and what does that look like?
Yeah. So, who controls the BRC process? So the idea is that there's certainly someone who presses the merge button now and then.
Yeah,
There's the rules of contribution are actually in a repository. The easiest way to find this stuff, by the way, is brc.dev/one. Just go to one, and I think there's a fake BRC there, but you'll see the rest of the site. And top left is a contribute button that will take you to the GitHub, where you can either post like an issue for discussion. You can make sort of BRC yourself just by doing a pull request to that repository. And so several people have done that at this point. It's just a handful of people so far. So I'm hoping to get the word out so that more people come forward with their various technical ideas or non-technical ideas. There's a section in there that's just commentary or something like that, or just ideas. So if it's like a UX thing that you're really enthusiastic
sure.
about, put forward, absolutely chuck it in there. And the
Yeah,
whole point is to try and get this sort of development to be more of a public conversation. So there's a little bit more transparency in terms of what we're doing. So even if we have an internal project, we're sticking it up as a BRC these days,
yeah,
so that people can comment on it and say, actually, this is a bad idea, and that has happened, and we have improved our ideas based on that feedback. So it's a
cool.
good control mechanism. It's a feedback loop that we were sorely missing previously.
Yeah. So let's and who manage, like, who is the guy who merges the stuff on the
Uh,
BRC repo?
So initially, it was Ty from Project
Mhm.
Babbage. These days, Ty can do it. I can do it. I think Connor Murray has access as well. I think
Okay.
it's just my. Oh, I need to go to the gym now. So yeah, it's my gym.
All right,
So,
well, good seeing you. Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, the simple answer is, the BSVA ultimately
Yeah.
control
Okay.
what goes in, but the rules, we're sticking to rules. We set out these rules saying like, look, there's no editorializing.
Yeah.
I had to push back at the start because it was like, I don't agree with that idea. It's like, doesn't matter. You put it in there.
Yeah.
It's somebody's opinion. We're not saying that we advocate for every opinion in here. The whole point
Yeah.
is the best way to figure stuff out is to make sure there's a public square where people can uh,
For sure.
put down their ideas.
Cool. No, that's great. So let's talk a little bit about overlays. Like what the heck is an overlay? And 'cause I think conceptually, you could kind of call Arc an overlay, or at least it's the building blocks to being one. I
Right.
think it is an overlay. I would
Yeah.
personally call it an overlay. But like what when we talk about, oh, there's going to be an overlay for that. I've heard that like at least half a dozen times for half a dozen different things. But
Yeah.
for somebody that maybe doesn't understand like network topology and stuff as a concept, can you explain what is an overlay generically, and then what are we doing in BSV over the coming like 18 months to implement them network wide?
Yeah, generically, so that I don't repeat myself from various webinars and things, I would just say generically, it's like a higher level of abstraction over some underlying thing. So in Bitcoin, in BSV, this is, the underlying thing is really the transaction. And then anything that overlays that is like particularities of a subset of all transactions. I would say that an overlay service is literally just a server that will ingest valid BSV transactions and also subject those to additional rules of the designer's choice. So if you wanted to make an overlay that only accepts transactions that say banana, then you can set those rules up in the sort of topic manager of an overlay service. Right? And those, in some sense, become banana tokens. It's as simple as that.
Sure.
And then it sort of keeps that subset of transactions. And when people want to retrieve transactions related to that banana token, they go to that overlay. And it doesn't have to be one server, but in the simplest case, it would just be one server. And then you can look up any banana tokens from that one overlay. So if we think of BSV as generally a token system, overlays are a way to set up infrastructure that only deals with a subset of transactions.
Yeah.
And that's where you'd go instead of what's on chain, which is like everything. In some sense, what's on chain is an overlay, but it's just for everything.
Sure.
Then you have overlays that specialize and do certain lookups that only make sense in their context, like one for car parts or whatever.
Right. Well, yeah, I've often to developers when asked about Jungle Bus, I always say, like, think of it as an overlay engine. It pre-filters and it will feed you just what you need, and then you can set up a light index that simply, feeds what you need. Yeah. So
I would almost call back in my Baymail days, if I set up a Baymail server that was ingesting from Jungle Bus, but only keeping the Baymail transactions, and then serving those via API, then that would technically be like a Baymail overlay.
Yeah,
and then there's the whole conversation in San Francisco about does it matter how you feed an overlay? So one argument is, well, if you're running Teranode kind of level of traffic and you're not a miner, then the most efficient thing would be to expose an API that accepts transactions from users and then allows them to look those transactions back up later for whatever reason. And obviously the Jungle Bus approach is, because you're a miner, you already have the transactions. So you can kind of filter them down to those overlays that are feeding off of that system. So there's two approaches to filling up those specialized overlay networks. Yeah,
for sure. The other exciting thing is the SDK libraries.
Yes.
So first of all, what is being managed? Well, for clarity, we have TypeScript, Go, Python, and then I don't know what I don't know. Is there anything else in the pipeline, or is that what we got?
Yeah, I don't like the whole secretive marking thing. So yes, we're talking to we're actually talking to Ascript, who are doing the Python library, about potentially doing a Rust one. We have also been in talks with nChain, of course, because there's several engineers there that have existing libraries that are proprietary. And that stuff, I think that they probably want to protect IP-wise.
Yeah.
So we've got to still figure out the details there. But yes, I think there's some demand for us owning an SDK in Rust, because the current one is in that same state that the Money Button one was, where there was a company that was developing it, and then they've moved on, and now it's kind of getting stale. So we're taking a look at Brenton Gunnings, and we're taking a look at Firenix. What's his name? Is it Nick?
Nick, from
BSV Wasm.
The BSV Wasm library. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, so they're still producing something. I think that's probably more well maintained. So we'll look at those and see what we can do to help support and also introduce beef to that library. The whole point of these SDKs is beef first, and compatibility with what exists today second. Like that's important, but secondary to, let's move on. Let's get to this world where I have a transaction and I can email you it, and you are able to validate that.
Yeah,
that's contrived, but that's the point. It doesn't matter what the transport is. I give you the data, you need to be able to validate that.
Yeah, No, absolutely. So let's talk about libraries for the non-technical person. What the hell am I using any of these libraries for? Who's using them, and under what circumstances are they like, oh, I really wish there was a Python library for X problem. Like, what is that problem that is being solved by this library?
Yeah, so I think it's the target market is people who are keen to build up something new and special. So it's not necessarily for the entrepreneurs that are building a business and they're not developers themselves. They
Mhm.
just want a wrapped up wallet solution, and they maybe do some JavaScript here and there. It's not really for that. It's for the people who want to build um, at a lower level than that. They want to build the first version of a new idea.
Yeah.
That's where these libraries are going to come in really useful. Um, so because they're dealing with construction of transaction, really the cool thing about the libraries is construction of transactions, the transaction
Mhm.
builder and the validator. So
Yeah.
validating a transaction, you get just hex and you can pump it into this thing and say validate, and it actually does all the checks and does all SPV. So it looks kind of uncomplicated at the surface level, but that it's going
Yeah.
pretty deep down into every bit and byte and checking things. Um, so people who want to develop novel script types. So let's say
Mhm.
if you have a smart contract, for example, obviously you've heard of script if you're in that camp.
Yeah.
These things are compatible with script. You can define things as script templates. Perhaps you've got some proprietary smart contract you don't necessarily want to publish. Well, you can use this library to build the sort of surrounding transaction construction.
Sure.
And it's a lot easier than doing all of that yourself. And a lot of the thinking in terms of how do we conceptualize building a transaction in the first place, all of that's kind of been done by people who are like veterans at building transactions. And so
Right.
the interfaces are really sort of handy for being able to put those transactions together quickly and
Yeah.
efficiently. And so that the rest of your developer team actually understands what's happening,
Yeah.
um,
Which is key.
which is key because they need to maintain it.
So if we could make a comparison, I get everybody on the Ethereum team saying, well, here's why Ethereum can't lose. The developer kit, the tooling is light years ahead of everybody else. Nobody's going to catch up. The fact that we attract more devs mean we will always stay ahead.
Yeah.
How does what we're doing here with these BSV libraries, how close or how much closer does that get us to like Ethereum level development, utopia?
Yeah, it's a good point. Yeah, so things are easier when you are well. I mean, I would say that there's a lot of successful companies that built infrastructure for Ethereum that then trap their customers in some sense into those things. So
Sure.
I wouldn't necessarily say that's like a good thing if you are thinking deeply about that. But I would say that generally the sort of onboarding experience obviously is better.
Yeah.
Um, but so what these SDKs do is mirror that better experience. So DX developer experience is greatly improved because all of the hard stuff is kind of done for you in
Yeah.
these libraries. Um, but it still gives you that flexibility so that you're not dependent on some external service. So it really is more about like, well, if you want to be the first person to do something, usually there isn't a service that's providing you exactly what you need.
Sure.
Now, there's an easy way to build those services. You can build an overlay that does a specific thing for your particular application.
Yeah.
So if you're out in the real world solving actual problems rather than just um, spinning up another meme coin or whatever,
Yeah.
then it's going to be a lot easier to use these SDKs to build those like novel solutions.
Sure. Is there so I actually know the answer to this because David gave me a little bit of a heads up over the last 24 hours.
Yeah.
David Case, that he was playing with script and making a novel contract, and then he was like, "Oh, this all worked really,
Sure.
really well." Like he was, yeah, like he was pumped. So,
Yeah.
can we maybe explain like how much would you guess like his process in developing such a thing? Like, did he add 95% efficiency to his development process versus had he come up with the idea for the smart contract? What would he have had to have hard coded from scratch versus I'll just plug in these bits and see how it combobbles out the other end? And
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. So I would say that writing the first version of something is always like a massive cognitive load. And other members of my team are not as familiar with this, and it definitely shows that if you put a 15-minute meeting in a developer's calendar, it destroys their entire day of productivity. And it's because this stuff requires real heavy cognitive load to figure out. So I think that this SDK definitely reduced the cognitive load for coming up with or putting the first version of something together. Absolutely, because like you kind of alluded to, you just have like 5 holes and you need to fill those 5 holes and then it's done, kind of thing. And it's like, oh yeah, it does work like this. So I think it's because it was put together with the absolute sort of with the right philosophy. It's like the actual BSV philosophy of this is actually what we're building here, because that's the high level stuff is really clear. That makes it easier to build these new things.
Sure. So what other stuff, maybe have I not asked about or forgotten about, or would you like people to know if your favorite ninja dev in the whole universe joins BSV over the next 3 weeks because he watched this interview? What do you wish he would know about BSV that you maybe he wouldn't hear otherwise?
That the approach does not rely on external services. That's the first thing to learn, because if you're coming from one of these other blockchains, almost always there's some service sitting up there giving you the transactions, and you just say, here's my address. Yeah, exactly. Here's my address. Go get my stuff. And this is childish thinking, and we're able now to pass each other the actual data so that we're not reliant on these centralized services. Now, there are convenience methods built into the SDKs as well. So you can get one thing centrally, and that is headers. So there's a convenience method for using what's on chain's header source. And this is going back to the principle of, the main security, the concepts of a secure blockchain is wide dissemination of block headers, and the fact that they're obviously it's obvious when they are fake. So as you well know, there's lots of energy being put in by miners. The headers, the block hash of these headers, it has many zeros at the front of it. So if you see a bunch of headers and their hashes, and one of them doesn't have a bunch of zeros, you know for sure that it's fake, kind of thing. So the main takeaway, I guess, from using these SDKs is the headers are all you need. Everything else should be passed between peers. And that's really the big concept. If you get that, you're going to be way ahead of the crowd in terms of building applications that are peer-to-peer and therefore hyper scalable, will work forever. Very cool. So we've gotten some nice comments from a few people. Deep Wise, for example. It's my boy, Degan. If anybody has questions for Darren or Degan, I think he answers interchangeably to either name here. But if you have questions for him about anything related to this sort of stuff, or maybe who's your barber, where do you go work out, where'd you get those beautiful custom glasses made, that kind of thing, by all means ask. This is your opportunity to ask Darren the important questions, and we'll start with Hecto here. Is BSV the only blockchain capable of tokenizing, presumably, the whole financial system, and what role play IPv6 in this matter? Not the most well-constructed sentence, but what are your thoughts? We'll take some creative license with interpreting. Yes. Okay, so is the only blockchain capable of tokenizing the whole financial system? Not only that, but sort of every item on Earth and so on and so forth. Yeah, like that's the idea. That you need a lot of bits to cover everything, if that's what you want to achieve. And so I guess I would say there's an economic element of this as well, that it's able to do that, but it's also able to solve the big problem when doing that, which is how do you distribute the cost of facilitating the transfer of all of these tokens, whether they be in a financial system or just the sort of global ecosystem. Not just I read this as sort of financial services, but I suppose financial system, I don't know whether you would call it something else if it was tokenizing everything. And what role does IPv6 play? Well, you run out of addresses is the first thing. If you have IPv4, we've already run out of addresses, so you have to have the address space IPv6. But also, you can get more efficiency with things like if you need to deliver the same packets to multiple people, you can use IPv6 multicast. That's something that Jake Jones, I'm sure he's been on a couple of times here and spoken about multicast. He's our multicast boy. Leading the way on really hacking away at getting that stuff to work, not just at AWS, but like elsewhere. So I think the idea long term is to be able to directly address, I mean, kind of like you and I are talking just now. I always reference this because I'm always on these calls. This is WebRTC we're talking over. And there is point-to-point data traveling between us so that we have a like low latency communication possible. And so the idea is with IPv6, we can send those packets directly from device to device. And if you can do that, and if you have beef, then you actually get the proper Web3 decentralization, that sort of stuff.
There you go.
You can do it for real.
IPv6 is that other thing that you get to throw at the. So if anybody ever asks you, how does BSV actually solve? The answer is Teranode overlays and IPv6. And you just like stir them together, and you have a perfect goulash of answers for for whatever question is asked.
This is an answer to Stephen February's question at first. I noted down the answer, but it puts that URL on screen, which is really useful.
Yes,
beef.network.
For those who don't know their Germanic vowels.
Umlaut. You can hold the O and press 4 on Mac. I'm not sure how to do it on Windows, I'm afraid.
Yeah. No, good stuff. Does anybody else have questions out there? I know we've got viewers here that develop. I see Rachel Brady saying she'll be using the Python.
Yeah. I saw on X earlier. So the Python SDK is going through the final phase of review. Like I basically gave the development team like a long laundry list of stuff that I'd like to see before we sort of officially announce everything. I would say that I think it's going to be really familiar. You could take a look at it right now. You could probably guess the URL, but it's kind of soft launch at the moment, just for internal review purposes. We're going to get that on the marketing stream to talk about it when it's actually launched officially. And it's going to be very familiar to people who have seen what we're doing with the TypeScript SDK and the Go SDK. I'm keen to get that script template concept just like the same in Python, so you don't have to relearn anything.
For sure.
Especially because it's going to be hugely useful with all of the script tools, because hopefully will be compatible in time. So
awesome.
Watch this space.
Very cool. Any final thoughts? I think I may cut you loose a little early here because we've got a couple of special features for the show that I need to debut that would just be you sort of wondering what the heck you're doing here. So
there's one more thing in that case.
Yes.
So beef transactions, you can actually send them to Arc now. You don't need to do anything different. Just send them to Arc as if they were extended format or anything else. And it will actually do all the validation before broadcasting to the network. So it can sort of give you early warnings if there are issues with the structure of the transaction.
Awesome. No, I actually love that concept. So beef, it's funny. I remember seeing beef and bump mentioned in a couple different things, and I was like, all right, who's naming this nonsense? And then I actually went and read what beef was, and I was like, oh, finally. Like, it's one of those things that I've been saying, like, hey guys, if we were to just do X, because you get all these people explaining, they're like, well, here's why the back to Genesis problem can't be solved in Bitcoin, and just all the like these kind of things. And it's like, well, there's, like we just need to decide on the way that we do it. And then it's actually a pretty practical solution. And then beef is a pretty damn good one for how to do that in a way that is like easily understood. And then,
it's opinionless because it's a binary format. It's like just the bytes you need and pretty much nothing else.
Yeah, no, it's really good stuff. So, Darren. No, it's honestly, it's been a pleasure. I'm glad. Like I said before, you were on the air here. It's been good getting to see you more often and work with you more regularly, because you've always been one of those guys that I think I said both professional and funny, which I can work with anybody that has those two qualities. But no, really, it's a delight. I think you're a really good man for that role, both because you're organizationally, like, you're good at managing things, but also you're in the weeds. You're not just a random project manager. Well, I've been professionally trained to be a project guy, or
Oh, I see what
or
you
whatever
mean.
else.
Yeah. Yeah,
But
I'm as much a nerd as the guys that are on my teams.
yeah, and that's key. It's funny. I've said that a few times over the last couple of weeks when people have asked me, and I'm like, look, we're in a place where we don't just need talented people, we need passionate people. And so I'm glad you're in the role you're in. Same for guys like Connor and Jake, like guys that really care about the whole mission and they're part of the mission. And
Well, we certainly wouldn't still be here if we didn't. I think that's
yes.
we've had a good weeding out
Yeah.
of those that aren't necessarily on board.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, Darren, thanks again.
Thank you.
We'll let you go.
Always a pleasure. Take care, Kurt.
Yeah, likewise. So so we're gonna try this this meme of the week thing as we transition ourselves, as we cleanse the palate, as it were. So eat your ginger and take a shot, and we're gonna change up whatever's coming up next here. But we're gonna have a little intro piece, and then we are going to go over the meme of the week. So Mr. Vidal, let her rip.
And now it's time for the meme of the week.
All right, guys. So focus for a second. There's this guy on a flight. Okay, he's on a flight to Austin, and he's using Neuralink, the like Elon plug into my brain and steal my intellectual property directly out of my head technology. And there's a lot of things he could do with this, but immediately he tweets declaring that he's made a meme. Okay, he made a cat dressed as a pilot with a mustache. With Neuralink, basically, so like directly using his brain in order to do such a thing. And so if you're keeping score at home, and I hope you are, the brain implant tech that lets us communicate with each other telepathically, and also solve complex problems, like speed us up, turn us into superhuman warriors. I don't know if you ever saw that movie with Kurt Russell where he's like all those other things. Well, you can also make a Captain Meowgelin, cat with mustache. And Mr. Vidal, let's play the meme. Let's show people the meme of the week, and then we'll be right back again.
Hey, get that out of my face. I'm doing important work here.
So there you go, ladies and gentlemen, the meme of the week. We are now using cool cat coding. Just post Soldier. Yes, the movie is Soldier. Really good movie, really weird dystopian movie, but it was a lot of fun. I watched it at 2 a.m. once, like 20 years ago, I feel like. But if you're looking for some solid entertainment, it's a good one. But that's what people are using the technology for. So Mr. Vidal, if we have another couple of questions, we got about 4.5 minutes left here in the show. So if people have more general questions about Bitcoin and anything else going on in the space, I'm happy to take those. And there's also that little opportunity to win the comment of the week here, which will be you'll be rewarded by the Champions TCG team with a free pack of cards. Project Babbage getting a shout out here from Wu Tao. Yeah, absolutely. The Babbage people are they're right about a lot of things. Ty and I have our very civil and respectful disagreements about some things, but Ty's a sharp guy, and frankly, I like his whole team. It's a bunch of really good guys. Standards and apps that follow common standards. Absolutely, that's how you build the future of everything. The Real Newspaper. I don't know what that is, but BSV, let's go. I appreciate it out there. Best people, best tech. I agree completely. As one of those people getting that praise, I will take my share of the credit for it. Anyways, Rachel Brady, who is one of my faves. Actually, we got to get you back on the show. We haven't seen you in a while, Rachel, so we're gonna have to bring you back on and see what's going on with your projects. But Rachel, thanks for watching. I appreciate you and your feedback. I see my car leaving the driveway, which means my family goeth. Okay. Emilio Morao, BSV is the blockchain that works. And wouldn't you know it, that is probably why they hate us. And I'd encourage you, go check my pinned tweet and read about my theory about why they hate us for being the blockchain that works. It's an interesting anecdote, and I'd like your feedback. Hey, Kurt, what's happening with Teranode? First of all, it's spelled with one R, although I have always been partial to the 2R variation. Because it's like world node, and I've always just kind of liked the way that sounded. But it is Terra, T-E-R-A, as in terabyte, not T-E-R-R-A, as in world node. But I like the world node concept. I think there's funner memes going from that direction. But as far as what's going on with Teranode, I mean, development is deep in the weeds, as opposed to having Australians in charge. There have been Vikings in charge for the last year or so, and well, there's been a whole lot more land conquered by the Vikings than have been conquered by the Australians. No offense, I love my Aussie friends. Frankly, my Aussie friends are some of my favorite colleagues, but I'm myself mostly German and Swedish, and so I'm gonna give a shout out to my Viking colleagues. Honestly, there's not much to say other than I know that it's an active development. I am privileged to get to see some of the development update calls with Siggy, who's the lead developer on the project right now, and stuff's looking great. I know they just did a test where they were using 6 distributed nodes because of some standard. I can't remember if it was ISO standards or if it was some consulting group that said like, hey, in order to be published in some very specific way, you need to have 6 endpoints that are transacting with each other. So they took what was a 2 or a 3 node cluster. They distributed to a 6 node cluster. It was like one on at least each of the inhabited continents of the planet, and had a very successful test among the 6 nodes of Teranode. And I know it hit 1 million transactions per second, and I don't want to speak authoritatively, but I think Siggy said they were really cranking the heat and pushing toward that 2 million TPS zone and not having a whole lot of problems with it. So that's what I know that is like digestible public information. As for, what the day-to-day looks like, I know it is a daily, full-time, active, multi-person team, iterating, testing, and managing, the Teranode future. But I am not privy to all of that inside information. So even if I knew, it probably wouldn't be fun media. So that's the best I can do. Any news on a new company running BSV for supply chain? I believe I caught wind of some news of that. Yeah, there was an announcement. Every time I think supply chain, I always think Unisat, because Stefan is just a good dude and has a lot of experience in that space. And Unisat is an active company. Like, in fact, the last time I saw them on stage, they were talking about like their new customers. They're doing stuff. So, but I don't recall who the people were on the new announcement, but I do remember there was an announcement. So one of those things I should probably know as a professional broadcaster here. Now let's bang out another thought or two, Mr. Vidal. Great work. We're gonna have to choose a comment of the week here to win the champions cards here. I don't know. I don't know if anybody's really put the work in to win something here. Good work by BSV Association. Keep protecting BSV from bad apps, scams, bad actors, please. Very important. Good stuff. Thank you, sir, Mr. Wu Tao, who is not a name I recognize. So maybe you're an old friend with a new screen name, but better than Oven and Muffin, dear BSV Association. Don't let Darren name anything ever. That's funny. That's about as good a name as Baymail. So I liked Baymail conceptually, but like the naming and the branding I thought was quite good, but I'm also not very cool. So that's could be a problem. What else do we got here? Are we picking a comment of the week, Mr. Vidal. Who do we like? What do we like here? We've got I will clap like Vitalik as we choose a comment of the week. Ooh, what do we got in the private chat? Stefan, here it is. How is Liteclient SPV Client supposed to get a Merkle proof? Actually, yeah, that's a good one. Steven deserves it for being a really great and long-time listener, watcher of the show, but also ignited good discussion. So, Steven, please reach out to Alex Vidal. He is at Costly Signals, or you can send a DM to the CoinGeek account, I believe, and give your hand cash handle. We will send you the cards courtesy of the Champions TCG team. Thank you, Champions. You guys are great. The game's great. The whole thing is awesome. Miles is a G, and he's out there doing that development that really matters. And then all the other people in the periphery over there. I think it was actually Brett working with those guys and brought in Degan and a whole bunch of other stuff. So Brett, you deserve more credit maybe than anybody else. Unsung heroes in the BSV space for making sure everybody gets those handshakes and making friends all around. So Brett, thanks for being you. We are 2 minutes over the hour, so I'm gonna go ahead and wrap this bad boy up. Steven, I need you to reach out to Alex Vidal at Costly Signals on X, or send a message to the CoinGeek account on X.com. So everybody, I'm Kurt Wicker Jr. Thanks to Darren for coming on the show. Thank you for all the new sponsors, Rock Wallet, all the rest of them. They're gonna get you're gonna get one more opportunity to watch the Rock Wallet ad on the way out. So thank you to all those guys. Anybody else who wants to sponsor, please reach out to Mr. Alex Vidal. We would love to have your sponsorship, feature you on the show. If you'd like to be a guest, you can also reach out. Let us know what you're up to. We would like this to be the place where we announce your new stuff. So if you got a cool thing, you got a cool business, got a big idea, reach out. We'd love to have you on. Even if it's only worth 15 minutes of time, maybe we'll do a tapestry of guests for an episode too. So don't be afraid to reach out. We'd love to have you. And everybody, thanks for watching. And last but not least, in fact, maybe not least at all, maybe most importantly, be good to each other. Nothing is worth anything if we all end up being a bunch of toxic pricks. So be nice, but also be good. I'm Kurt Wicker Jr. The show is over. I have earned my break and I have earned my lunch, ladies and gentlemen. I will see you next week.